I have been racking my brains to try and figure out a way of reviewing Dreams. First of all, it's not even what I would call a game. It's more like a creation suite. And I had to bite my tongue there because I almost said game creation suite, because games are the only one thing you can make in this. It's ridiculous. You can not only make games, but you can make animation, you can make like short films or whatnot, or you can just sculpt artwork or paint, or it's also only 35 quid at launch. It's not even a full price title, and yet the quality and complexity and the sheer number of tools available, it's mind-boggling. And I can't possibly stand up in front of a camera and just rattle off things to talk about. I've got to show you. I've got to go through it and show you what is possible. It's the only way I can do this. Unlike Media Molecule's previous games, Little Big Planet games I mean, there is no campaign. There is only dream surfing and dream shaping, which basically means dream shaping is you can make your own content, dream surfing is you can play content that other people in the community have played. There are some sample things by Media Molecule, but otherwise you're just kind of left to it. And that means that the game doesn't really have a hook to draw you in, and in my opinion it kind of lacks some of the charm that Little Big Planet had, because there's no campaign, there's no chapters, there's no story, there are no characters, there's no story you can really get invested in. There's a ton of tutorials that'll take you through everything. Beginners stuff you can probably figure out just by messing around with things, but then you get up to things like intermediate and then advanced, and they start teaching you tricks that you couldn't possibly figure out for your own. As soon as you fire up the level for the first time, you get a boring blank slate, except for the brown thing. I'm just going to delete it. This is your thermometer down here, shows you how much memory you've used. That'll be important later. So I'm going to open the sculpt mode, allows me to create things. So I'm just going to create like a field with some forest nearby. If you hover over something for too long, you get a tooltip, which is quite handy. Means that the help files are built in. I'm going to resize this. I can zoom out and just alter this. There we go. And I'm going to make it a bit narrower. Yep. Okay, so I've reshaped the tool. Going to alter the colour to green because I'm creating a field. And I'm going to change the fleck type to streaky, which makes it look like grass. I'm going to change the finish to rough. Okay. Now I just stamp a copy of it in the world, and then I back out, and that's a sculpture. Very, very simplistic sculpture. So I just set that there somewhere. And then I just duplicate it, put it alongside it. And then I duplicate it and resize it a bit. Get a bit of variety going. So that is the same object, it's just bigger, that's all. Give this a little bit more depth. I'm going to create a second sculpture. Same principle, only I'm going to make this a bit thicker, so that it doesn't all look the same. Alright, I've got a thicker one now. I can just plonk that at the back somewhere just to give it a bit of different thickness. Make it way bigger. Okay, so just about just over 15 minutes and I've still used just the two same objects and graphics memory has barely budged. If you can replicate objects and clone them, is what it's called, then it's a lot more saving on memory, which is what you want if you want to create a big space. Okay, so now I've got those. Going to select them all and group them together. So now that it behaves as though it's one solid object. Now I'm just going to drop it down just below what the game considers to be floor height. Looks a bit boring. Let's change that. So let's go to paint and let's go for impressionist. And blue, and let's go for shiny metal, and now guide surface snap. So now it'll paint on whatever surface I aim at. Now then there's two controller modes. You can use the thumbsticks and that's fine if you want to be accurate, but if you want to be a bit more free-flowing, you can turn the motion sensor on. Which for me is a bit of a pain because you have to do this to control the cursor now and it wears out my wrists after a while. So, which is why I have the other mode turned on usually. So, recenter. And now we paint from one end to the other. Like so. Paint through the curve. And hey presto. Let's raise this up. Just a single line doesn't... It looks more like a trickle, let's be honest. Oops. Open its tweak menu. Animation. And dial up the animation speed. Play. The game is on pause right now, so say it to play and you can see how the line is now moving. You can alter the playback speed like so, make it go even quicker or slower. Alright, now duplicates along line. Now there's more than one. Spread, dial it up a bit so that it's hopefully covering the whole width. Copies, dial it up, and that's as much as we're getting. I think I've stretched it beyond its comfortable width. Never mind. Okay, so I finally got that sorted out. I had a bit of trouble drawing the branch off river over here. For some reason it wouldn't duplicate in the right direction. But anyway, got it sorted. Next, I want to put a few rocks around the place. So, sculpt. And select a greyish colour. Now, I can just... like smear the tool and create a bit of a basically a streak. I can do that kind of thing, yeah, where it just I can do very complicated stuff and do in and out and do all this kind of thing. And I don't know if you noticed there, but my my memory usage is just shot up massively. So if I pull out and check the memory consumption, that was at 1%, it shot up 20%. That's an incredibly complicated sculpture that I just created right there. So that's not great for memory consumption. I don't want it in any case. So, do it properly this time. Right, so if I switch it to stamp mode, that means that when I press the button I only get one copy of it. If I go into the editing tool in stamp mode, you get an extra little menu in the middle there, and it's blend. Oops. So if I dial up the blend to about halfway, If I stamp a square down, that's all you get. But if I now overlap it, you might just be able to see that it's blending the two. Now this is what blending is. So if I turn it at an angle and just stamp it again, and then stamp it again, just rotate it a little bit, stamp it again. Okay, I think that'll do as a rock. So that's taken up 4% of the graphics memory. But there's a nifty little trick that this game has up its sleeve. Go to Tools and Sculpture Detail. Every sculpture, the paint lines of the river don't count, they're different. The sculptures have a detail rating. Blue indicates very cheap in terms of memory. Red indicates very expensive in terms of memory. So you can see the rock is very expensive, comparatively speaking. Tap, 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 tap. And now it isn't. If we come out of there, you can see that now the rock has become a bit weathered. It's just not got as much sharpness to its detail anymore, and the memory requirement has dropped. Just shove the rock in there to cover up that little gap. Duplicate, and I'm going to stick it in the middle of the river. But first of all, where is it? I think it's under Gadgets, Cameras and Lighting, Fog. Stamp it on there. Tweak menu. Make it a bit smaller. Alright, now we've got a few rocks dotted around the place. And bearing in mind that's all the same rock, so the system only has to remember one object. Now, let's try putting in... Oops, if I can get the right menu open. Let's put in a tree. Let's select sphere. No, actually it's curve that we want. Now, edit the curve. Extend it upwards. Give it a bit of a bend, bit of a kink. And then we can alter the size of the top bit, like so. Stamp. But this time we're going to do a branch. I think that's... just push it a little bit further that way and stamp. And come out the sculpture. And there we go. We've got a sort of tree. Sort of. Grab one of these big green bits, so I'm still not creating a new object. Downsize a bit more. Oops, I think I just accidentally created a clone. Down a bit, left a bit. It's a bit difficult maneuvering objects in 3D space when you're looking at a 2D screen. There we go. Alright, I'll admit the top of my tree looks a little bit like a flattened beehive, but it's more or less, you get the point. I've just used the same objects from the ground to make the green bits of the tree. Save myself creating another object. Group all these objects together. Bing. And if you think the greenery is not bushy enough, step into the object. Select all the greenery bits, like so. Style, is it? Yeah. Looseness. Because every object in the game, be it the paint strokes or the physical objects, are built of flecks. I'm about to space the flecks out. Because if the flecks are very close together, it looks like a solid object. But if you space it out, all of a sudden it doesn't look so solid. It looks a lot more bushy. And a bit more like a tree. There we go, back out. And it hasn't affected the trunk because the trunk wasn't one of the things I selected. There we go. Just duplicate the tree somewhere else. And draw. Like so. Right, now physics. Physical. Floppiness. Wind. Wind flap frequency. That's a bit better. And the thing just flaps around in the breeze as though there's a breeze or a wind. And hang on. Get it back centered, and that wasn't very convincing. And oh god, my drawing talents are useless here. This is why I don't like the motion sensor. Oh god, it's getting worse. I'm terrible with this. Why did they think this was a good idea? You know what, screw it, I'm using the thumbsticks. That was better. I had more control over a curve with the thumbsticks. Reduce the trail length, there we go. I don't know. And from one object, many will come. Offset each one a bit. It's looking a little bit more interesting now. I want to draw 5 petals at once. Yeah, there's an app for that. Let's build a bridge over the river. And there's some sneaky cloning tricks you can use to make it a bit easier. Let's rotate that. Oops. Lower it down a bit. Alright. So, clone the object as normal, but keep your finger on the button. Do not release it. And you can do it either way. You can use the directional pad to add additional duplicates to it. And if I rotate in the correct direction, you can see what happens when you rotate it as well. So if I'm going to put it about there. One more. Get the angle right and release. By my reckoning, this has taken me about 2 and a bit hours, but I actually had to frig around with that little side shoot of a river bit for about 30-40 minutes. I couldn't get the flex to expand sideways. They kept on expanding that way instead. So I reckon about 130, 140. And if you actually knew what you were doing, you might be able to do this even quicker. And this is just like artwork type stuff. We haven't even got to the mechanisms that are in the game yet, which I'm now gonna have a go at. Now, if you're familiar with Little Big Planet, some of these gadgets will look very familiar. Familiar, but not identical. So, if we find connectors, and we have a motor bolt. Remember that one. But this one works a bit differently. You connect it to the parent object, and then hook it in, if I can get it there. Just a second. There we go. To the you hook it to the parent object and then hook it to the child object. And then if you run it, you can see, but quite clearly, it turns. And this is a pivot point. And your whatever it is pivots around this circle. So I've just moved it up. And now you've got a really, really weird motion out of it. Which is not something that Little Big Planet could ever do. Of course, a nifty little side effect of the bolt being more complicated is, like everything else, it gives you more options to play around with. That's because it's spinning like that. Oops, hang on. If you zoom in, again, it's rotating like that, so that's the direction the motor bolt rotates in. You've got to rotate the pivot point so it does that instead of that. And then when you run it, it spins in the correct direction. It's more complicated, but it lets you do way more stuff. It's confusing as hell. You've got various connectors, of course. This one is string. In this game, though, now you can switch between them at the press of a button. So I can quickly switch to elastic, or a slider, or a piston, and it changes it. I don't know if I'm stupid or what, but I can't find the spring anywhere. Now, I don't know if they thought it was irrelevant or one of these other gizmos can be used like a spring, but it does seem to be conspicuous by its absence, so I don't know what that's about. And of course, all the microchips, programming and holy shit logic makes a return. I'm trying to find that's the microchip. There's way more things here than there were before. And we now have a very primitive looking vehicle of such as it is. Yeah, I know, it's not really a vehicle, it's just a block of something, but once you get it sorted out, the programming to make it work is not that complicated once you know how to do it. It's the knowing that's the problem. Some little things have changed since Little Big Planet. The controller sensor, for example, is a hell of a lot more complicated than it used to be. And things like, as you can see, there's rotator over here. Everything has more options. It's the same, but way more than you're used to, if you're used to Little Big Planet. Well, sort of. It's not quite. Maybe I should have put a bolt through it. But the printable sound. It's an animation gadget that's causing that. See, the car, such as it is, has a controller sensor on it. Once you possess it, this trigger zone here is capable of detecting the possessed controller sensor. That then changes from sending a signal to this keyframe, which animates the beam in its lowered position. It switches to activating the upper keyframe, which is when the beam is in a raised position. In other words, keyframes allow you to animate things. Which is a big reason why this gadget works. It's a puppet. I don't know why I pronounced it like that. But puppets are incredibly complicated. I mean, that is just overall movement on that thing. This is lower body movement. This is upper body movement. This is the puppet, is the body structure. So we've got their head, neck, chest, left upper arm, left forearm, left hand, left thigh, left calf, left heel, left toes. And the entire puppet, if I highlight it, you can see just about, I think, if I put the mouse down here, you can see that there's a bunch of connectors inside it. And that's how it works. The puppet is just a series of blocks of material with connectors stringing it all together just to hold it in place. And then the, well, what actually happens, if I step into the puppet logic, we can see all the various types of behavior, and you can see there's plenty of keynote devices here. There's a remote control, a puppet interface, sorry, there. And that's carries all the oh god, carries all the various animation possibilities. It gets incredibly complicated. I won't even pretend to understand what the hell is going on here. There's all sorts here. There's all sorts of sensors there. There's a whole shitload of logic here. There's various movers and outputs and, oh god, too many to go through. Gameplay stuff. Cameras and lighting, the only thing I've touched on is fog, but there's tons of stuff you can do there. The connectors. Sound, music. I haven't even messed around with sound effects yet. I haven't even touched the sound stuff. And then there's a bunch of stuff online that Media Molecule, but other people have done as well. You see why I didn't bother with a full-blown review. It's just impossible. But that's some of the stuff you can do with this. It's way more complicated. On the one hand, it is more powerful, but it is more complicated. Because there's more to do, there's more that can go wrong. But I guarantee that if something you've tried goes wrong, it's your fault. This is by Media Molecule. I can't remember what dodge is though. What's the boost function? Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, as I was saying, this is by Media Molecule, and you'll be forgiven for thinking that this is this actually looks better than some basic games I've seen online. You know, the likes that come off of Steam and whatnot. It's ridiculous. I mean, this is all you do. You only have 5 enemy fighters, sorry, and you just shoot them, and that is literally all that you do. And you're getting shot to pieces very easily. But it just shows you the kind of things that are possible. Die! There we go. Dreams. It's not as charming as Little Big Planet, but holy shit is it more powerful. Way more powerful. You're much more dependent on the community for content as well. But I don't really know what else to say about this. I've run into a few game creation tools over the years because I've had an interest in that kind of thing, and this is on console. That's what gets me. It's not even on PC anymore. This is a console editing program, and it's the most powerful I've ever seen. I just had to show this off for what it is. It's so complicated and powerful and insane. You just have to see it. It can't be described, not really. You can try, but you'll fail. Okay, that'll do. What did you think of my review? Leave a like or dislike down below. What did you think of Dreams, or haven't you had a go at it? Are you vaguely interested in it? Or have I put you off it with its sheer amount of complexity? Let me know in the comments section down below. And if you kind of like, as I say, this is not normal for one of my reviews. I'm normally in front of a green screen doing daft stuff where I can. So if you like that kind of thing, you can subscribe, or if you think someone else might be a glutton for punishment, you can always share instead. See you next time. Hopefully I'll be back to a normal review format with the next one.